if the title is the impact of this and so, and so, use in your hypothesis the following words: there is significant impact of so and so and so. So the hypothesis of the study may be written in positive, declarative sentences, or it may be written in negative sentences. Example, in a declarative positive sentence, the hypothesis may be written in the following words: the use of electronic banking plays a significant role on the effective service delivery in Beka, in Kigali, in Rwanda. The use of electronic banking plays a significant role on the effective service delivery in Beka, in Rwanda. This is an example of a hypothesis statement as stated in declarative positive way. Example number 2. Written in negative sentence, your hypothesis is stated in the form of the statistical hypothesis, which are known as null hypothesis, or noted H0 or HO, the null hypothesis. And it can be also in the form which is known as alternative hypothesis, which is noted HA. Alternative hypothesis. HO means null hypothesis, HA means alternative hypothesis. Now let's see the examples. The statistical testing is based on null hypothesis, which is stated in negative form. Null hypothesis, negative form. Testing hypothesis means reject or accept hypothesis. Example, for the null hypothesis, you will say this: the use of electronic banking does not play a significant role on the effective service delivery in Beka, in Rwanda. That is your hypothesis statement used in the null hypothesis. The use of electronic banking does not play a significant role on the effective service delivery in Beka, in Rwanda. In alternative hypothesis, it will be the use of electronic banking plays a significant role on the effective service delivery in Beka, in Rwanda. That is the null, the alternative hypothesis. The use of electronic banking plays a significant role on the effective service delivery in Beka, in Rwanda. I think it is clear, dear student, dear listener, to understand that how you can write down your hypothesis, you can formulate your statement of hypothesis. Now let's go through the step number 8, which is significance of the study. This section of research describes specifically who will be beneficiating, or who will be the beneficiaries of your research. So the description could be in this way. For the significance of the study, you will write: the results of this research will enable the research to be, because, the research to this and that, because, and you write because. Why? For example, you will write in your significance of the study that the results of this research will enable the students in primary school or in secondary school or in universities to do this or to do that, whatever you is fitted here. The results of this study will enable young women or young men to do and that. In your significance of the study, you will also write the research of this research. The results of this research will enable the community, my district, my sector, in this, because, of course, the results of your study, of your research, will also help other researchers. Those will need also to make a research related to the topic, to your topic. So that is step number 8, which deals with significance of the study. That step is followed by step number 9, and we are still under chapter 1, introduction, justification or rationale of the study. These steps, in this section, you as a researcher, you are trying to describe the necessity to address the research, even though other researchers were addressed in the same way. But the problem is still there. But you have to go beyond that other did. So we need to look for the real causes of the problem. Other case, if there is not any research conducted in the same way, so it is necessary to do the current research. In other words, under justification, rationale of the study, you are going to show that maybe there are other researchers which were done before, but to this specific issue, they were not able, they did not cover this issue. So for you, you need to go beyond what others have done. You need to go to look for the real causes of the problem, which was not done before. You need to conduct this research because in your knowledge, there is no one who did such research. And that is your initiative. That is known as Agasha in Kinyarwanda. Agasha. You need to show that rationale, that Agasha in your research, something which is very current, very new. Step number 10, the limitation of the research, which is known also as scope of the research. These may be temporal, geographical, and social delimitation. So the limitations are actually the definitions you set as the boundaries of your own research proposal. So the limitations are in your control. They are in your control. The limitations or scope are set so that your goals do not become impossibly large to complete. The population you are not studying, for example, and why not? For example, you are doing your research in the district of Huye, or in the districts of Huye and Rubavu. Those are the two districts that you have set, or you have found that you need to use in your study, in your research. You don't need to involve all the districts of Rwanda, but you have selected Huye and Rubavu. That is the population that you are going to use. That is the delimitation. That is the scope. You can even say, among other national parks in Rwanda, I'm going to use the Nyungwe or the Akagera National Park. That is the limitation. Now, limitations of your study. Dear learner, dear student, make sure that there is a there is a difference between delimitations and limitations. So delimitations is under your control. It is a scope. It deals with boundaries. While limitations of a research, those are the potential weaknesses in your study that are mostly out of your control. Out of your control. While in the limitations, those are in your control. The limitations deal with what you control, you can control. But in the limitations, those are out of your control. Given limited funding, money, or yes, you are not able to find money to do that research. And your research design, the choice of your research design, the statistical model constraints, or other factors. Limitation is written when your research is finished, and according to financial limitations, according to your availability of time, according to the lack of information on the subject. Those were my limitations. Those were the limitations to my research. Step number 11, again, limitations of your research. In addition, a limitation is a restriction on your study that cannot be reasonably dismissed and can affect your design and results. Step number 12, the literature of your study. The literature review, or is known also as the literature survey, or the review of related literature. In this chapter, this deals with chapter 2 of your research. In this chapter, you should use as much as books and other sources as you can to support your topic, as well as your variables, indicators, and the assumptions you will have to be verified later. The topic that you set, that you defined ahead of time, will help you or will direct you to find the books that you need to use, to find the materials from internet that you need to use related to your topic. And of course, in your topic, there are variables. Those variables also, you need to make a review of literature which will help you to understand where those your variables. After the identification of research problem, the researcher must study all available literature to get himself or herself familiar with the selected problem. He may review two types of literature. Number one, the conceptual literature, which is related to the concepts and theories. Number two, the empirical literature, which consists of previous studies similar to the proposed research problem. The researcher should use literature review concerned with the problem. For this purpose, the journals, published or unpublished, government reports, books, and so on, are the first place where you, as a researcher, you can get information. Academic journals and conference proceedings, government reports, books, and so on, those can be used depending on the nature of your problem or your topic. The materials must be as recent as possible, as we have seen before. They should not be older than 10 years ago. 10 years ago. For example, if you are doing your research in this year, 2020, the materials that you need to use in your literature review should not go beyond 2010. For example, if they are older, let's say that they should start from 2010 or 2009, so that in 2020, someone who will be reading your research may know that this researcher has used recent materials, because those recent materials, they have recent information, updated information. This is important because, dear student, dear learner, because we are in the rapid social, political, scientific, and technology changes in the world. Our world is changing very, very quickly, very rapidly in terms of social, political, scientific, and technology aspects. Now let's go, after the literature review is completed, we are going to see now the chapter 4, the chapter 3, which deals with the methodology of your study. Under methodology, you need to define the research design of your research. A research design describes how you will approach the investigation for your research. The research of a study defines the study type. Example, if it is descriptive, if it is correlational, if it is experimental, if it is quantitative, and so on. Actually, this is a scientific step that we are dealing with. The research design is also for testing or verification of the hypothesis for measuring variables. It involves the selection of the population and sample. Examples can be descriptive survey, correlational, experimental. So you may say that the research design of my research will be using descriptive or descriptive survey or correlational. It is type of experimental type of research, etc. For example, if you are dealing with correlational research design, then you know that you are doing a type of research which deals with the relationship between two variables that you have seen before in the example that we used with banking and the clients. X and Y, those are two variables. Maybe there is a relationship, there is a correlational study of this and that. In your research design, you may use survey research design. And survey research design intends to measure the influence of, or the perception of, or the impact of, or evaluation of, or the attitude of. You may as well, in your research design, you may need to experiment the research design. You may say, the type of my research design is experimental, and it will need to find out the effect of. That is experimental research design. Step number 14 deals with population and sampling techniques. As you have seen under research design, you will also need to define the population and the sample technique that you will need to use. When you conduct a research study, you have a particular population in mind. Sometimes we study the entire population or we get a sample. However, some of the times it is necessary to study the entire population. This is possible under the following conditions. If the study involves a population of relatively few people, institutions, objects, events, or things. It is better to use or to study the entire population. For example, if you need to make a study which deals of maybe looking at or finding the impact of higher institutions or colleges and universities in your area, or let's say in the southern or in Kigali City. And you know that those higher institutions, colleges and universities are not many. Therefore, you can use them, all of them. If you know that the people who will come into your study are not many, for example, if you need to make a study of, for example, the impact or the influence of people with disabilities in their academic performance. The case study in your district, and you know that in your district you have people with disabilities who are not many. People with disabilities, I mean those people who, for example, who are blind, those who cannot speak. So those are the types of people with disabilities. So those are few. Therefore, you can use all of them in your population. So in another way, if you see that you have enough time and resources are available, the entire population can be studied. When the topic demands the study of a specific group, sometimes such group can be distinguished from any other group or persons. Like the group, a specific group, like a group of persons with disabilities. So that can be used, and you can choose to use the whole population. Example, here they say the classification of universities in Rwanda by public and private institutions and geopolitical zones. You know that those universities are not many. Then you can use them. Sample. The sample now is a part of the population. So it is extracted under the population. It is taken from the population. It must be the true representative of the target population in all its parameters or characteristics. There are two methods to get a sample from population. These methods are classified into probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So I'm saying that there are two methods to get sample from population. These methods are classified into probability sampling and non-probability sampling. A probability sampling is one in which chance factors determine which elements from the population will be included in the sample, or the individual subjects of the larger population equal opportunities of being selected and included as members of the drawn samples. So all the population have equal opportunities, equal chances of being selected. The probability sampling techniques include simple random sampling, systematic sampling, and stratified sampling, cluster sampling, and so on. Those are some of the techniques, sampling techniques of sampling. Once again, we are looking at the sampling technique, and as we have said, as you have seen, a sample is a part of a population which has to be a true representative of the target population in all its parameters or characters. We have seen that there are two methods to get a sample from population. These methods are classified as probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is one in which chance factors determine which elements from the population to be included in the sample. And the population, you suppose that the population have equal opportunities to be selected, and from which you will draw the sample. The probability sampling techniques include, for example, sample random sampling, the systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. And to understand very well these terms, you need to make a research. Let me ask you, dear student, dear learner, to make research on how you can formulate your sample by using random sampling. What does it mean? Systematic sampling. What does it mean? Stratified sampling. What does it mean? Cluster sampling. Cluster sampling. For example, if you are looking at the attitudes of young women, the attitude of young women vis-a-vis the problem of undesired pregnancies. In your, for example, in your district. So you will not need to use the young ladies of the whole district. That is not possible. Maybe you will need to select a sample by using a technique maybe called cluster sampling. Maybe you'll make a sample, a cluster sampling of your village, or your cell, or some cells which have, for example, young ladies who have that problem under study. So I give you the opportunity, the chance to go through your Google to understand well these terms: random sampling, systematic sampling, and stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. Now, step number 16 of your research deals with research instruments or data collection or data gathering procedures. This stage aims at collecting relevant information for measuring the selected variables. You are collecting information for your variables. The research instruments or data collection involves the construction and administration of the measuring instruments. The most frequent techniques to use are interviews, questionnaires, observations, tests, rating scales, and documentary sources. Under this section, you understand, dear learner, that you need now to collect the data. You need to collect information out of the population, out of the sample that you have selected. Therefore, you need to prepare the measuring instruments. Those measuring instruments will help you to know the opinions, or to get the information, the data. and you will collect that data. So those measuring instruments are known as questionnaires, interviews, observations, test ratings, scales, and documentary sources. So of course, you need to sit down and prepare your interview. You will not stand up once in the morning and go, I'm going to interview my population. No, you need to sit down and select and write down and choose the questions of your interview or your questionnaire. The questions should be related, directed to your variables, your topic, so that you will get the true information. Of course, you will also need to use the observations as technique of measuring instruments. You need to use the tests, you need to use rating scales, whereby your sample, your population will need to rate according to the scales. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, I accept, I strongly accept, I am undecided, those are rating scales. And you may need also documentary sources, depending on the type of your research. If you need to go through the documents, the reports, maybe it is related to the governmental agencies or business units, then you may go through the documentary sources which are available, which are given to you. So that is the step number 16. Step number 17 of your research deals with data analysis, which is also known as statistical treatment of data. Of course, after having collected data, now you are going to analyze those data. Data analysis implies extracting the required information which will serve to answer the research questions or test the hypothesis from the data collected. The data collected must be reduced, arranged, and presented in an organized form for easy analysis using suitable statistical techniques. This will enable you to generate some research findings from which conclusions and generalizations are being drawn. In other words, having collected all the data needed, you as a researcher, you will proceed with the use of statistics tools to the scientific methods for data analysis in order to answer the objectives or the problems of the research, or in order to answer the hypothesis that you have defined or you have set in your study in your research. The common statistical tools, for example, for a quantitative research to use in data analysis will be, for example, description of statistics such as frequency counts, percentages, mean, and standard deviation. These are some of the tools, common statistical tools, which will help you, dear researcher, to proceed with the analysis of your data, to analyze your data by descriptive statistics such as frequency. You see how many times the respondents have responded to this question, how many men, how many women, how old are they, you will put their frequency of responses, the percentages, the mean, and the standard deviation, just to help you to interpret your findings and to generate with the conclusions. So thank you for now, and I request you to please go through these steps that you have covered today so that you can understand them and try to start to use, to apply these steps in the topic that we have been given as example in this lecture, in this presentation. You may as well try to start to imagine the topic, some of the topics, and of course those topics will help you to write your thesis, your research, following the steps that you have seen. And we shall continue next time to see the rest of the steps that you will need, especially dealing with chapter 4, which is the presentation of the results, and chapter 5, which will deal with the conclusion and recommendations of your data. So thank you. Have a good day. God bless you.